Get inspired with the woman empowerment extraordinaire, Priestess LaMeél.
Greetings, beautiful goddesses. This is going to be a new series that I'm going to end this amazing year of 2023 with, and hopefully complete by the end of January 2024. I'm going to call this series The Man I Had to Leave. We'll call it that for now. And really, what I'm doing is I am in a situationship. I have been for a long time, about 15 years, off and on. This with an individual who is a walking red flag. Like, every single thing that happens is a red flag, has always been a red flag, except for in the very beginning. And truly, I would never suggest or recommend to my daughters or to any other female to stay and be in this type of situation. And even with, but I'm also wanting to use this as an example. So this is going to be mostly a story time. Mostly a story time that is recording, documenting the point from where I am, some memories that I'm still processing, and the end of this era in my life. So I will start every episode out with, one, I'll never say his name. Two, this is for entertainment purposes only. Entertainment, a little bit of educational purposes only. And I'm hoping by sharing this and being transparent, this is my truth, right? And of course, he probably has another truth with less facts. But the point is, I want women to know that they're not alone. I want women to know that, in the beginning of this, I was very naive. So there was a lot of information 15 years ago I didn't know. When I got into this relationship, or what I thought was a relationship, I was extraordinarily naive, and I had lived a very sheltered life, and I had just come out of a very abusive relationship, marriage. So the very first lesson in episode 1 of this series is, when you are leaving, have been in a highly abusive relationship in your past, a lot of times we will get into another abusive relationship not knowing it's abuse. Everyone else knows it's abuse. But when that abuse is not as severe as the previous abuse, you don't recognize it as abuse. And this is where my story began. I moved back to my hometown. Facebook emerged. A guy from school reaches out. I'm just coming out of an extraordinarily abusive, controlling relationship, and I really just want to go out. I don't want a relationship. I want a good time. I really want to explore my sexuality and take a break from my kids, because at that time I had 7 children, and start to figure out what my favorite color was, what I liked, who I really was, because that relationship had left me so broken. So he reaches out. I know him from school. I reach out to mutual friends, like asking, just because of my previous relationship, like, yo, does he have any mental health issues? Has he done anything, to his baby moms? Like, what is going on? Does anybody know? Nobody knew. Everybody was like, yeah, he's a kind of good guy. Go get wet. Essentially is what my guy friends who knew him were saying. And, it doesn't have to be a big deal. And I really wasn't interested in it being a big deal. Very early on in this dialogue, he had me on the phone one day when he was at work, and another phone rang, and he put me on hold, but I could still hear what was in the room, and he repeated the exact same thing to the person he was talking to as he had with me. Essentially, he was saying his daughter was having like a homecoming dance or whatever, and he had asked me if I wanted to chaperone with him. So clearly whoever was on the phone with him was another female, but again, we weren't serious, exclusive, like none of that stuff. And I didn't take that as a red flag, because my understanding of dating is that you're seeing more than one person, or you're seeing a person, it's not serious, you haven't made any commitment. Now, I was talking to multiple people. I wasn't sleeping with anyone. We talked a lot over a period of time. We met for lunch when he was on his lunch break, because he lived in the bordering state, like right across the bridge kind of thing. So, after a couple of lunches, he worked up the nerve, and while I was talking, he like leaned in and kissed me. But we didn't really have that energy going on. Like, yes, I completely liked him, but that wasn't the vibe in the moment. So he reaches in, kisses me, and then pulls back, and I was like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm waiting to see if you're going to hit me. So you already knew you crossed a boundary. You already knew it was inappropriate, like the whole thing. I would say we dated off and on for like 5 years. Come to find out, he had a really toxic relationship. If he wasn't sleeping with his baby mom, mother of his children, whatever he called her, he definitely was trying. Like, there were clear signs. But at that time, I didn't know that they were clear signs. He took me as someone who was giving off an innocence, but was not that. And in fact, because I, had 2 marriages kind of back to back with just a little bit of dating in between. And my first marriage was my boyfriend from high school. Like, I didn't have a lot of playing the field experience. Anyway, at one point, he's talking to me, we're making plans. He says he's at his baby mom's house. He needed to go talk to her about something. I'm literally on the phone. I hear him knock on the door to her house, and then he says he'll call me back. Maybe 20 minutes later, maybe not even that, he calls me back and says I'm on speakerphone, and they've decided to get back together, and that was it. I said nothing, because I felt like it was hella disrespectful for you to be calling me on speakerphone. Like, this is how you're telling me. So this whole hood life, ghetto life, baby mama drama, all of that, I never had any experience with prior to this relationship. Everything I ever thought was an exaggeration of a black woman and who had children by, a man that she wasn't married to, was an exaggeration that they did for television. Come to find out, it was art mirroring life, but it was a life that I never knew. This has been truly a lot of my engagement within this situationship has taken me down some of the most lowest level experiences I had ever had in my life. Even though I'm telling you, I literally had left a very, very abusive relationship. So I had some physical negative experiences in that previous marriage. This situationship has taken me through, and I have gone through emotional, spiritual, physical, and mental abuse before I knew what it was. I didn't know when I got into this relationship what having narcissistic tendencies were, or anything like that. I learned after leaving my ex-husband that he had several mental health issues. I knew towards the end of the relationship, when I was preparing to leave, that he had bipolar. And there were some devastating things that happened. This shit right here, this person, all of the things that are going on in the interwebs right now, everything that you can find on TikTok about men is true. And some of you may be in really great relationships, and this is not to say you shouldn't be. But undoubtedly, this relationship has taught me not just the nature of this man, the other two men that I actually married, the other men, my father, my stepfather, the men in my life, my own boys. I have now 3 adult male children. Their nature is not something that we as women should really be associated with on an ongoing consecutive basis, and I will say, yes, I love the D, would love to be having great sex, feel like I need to be having great sex, but there are lots of cultures right now that still exist where you can choose a man and be with a man, but he doesn't live with you. Lots of things like that. And I'm really leaning towards that. Since I've been in this situation, I have always said, the only way that this would continue is if we live next door to each other, because I know that it is not something that I want on an ongoing basis. And as I trickle through and filter out all of these different toxic ass events that have happened, at each juncture I'm going to say, and if it's happening to you, you should have left, right? Why did I stay? I had a child with this person, and one of the tricks that have been used to sort of keep me close is that whenever we had a child maybe 5 years in, okay, because he's 11 now, and we've been off and on for we're going on 16 years. So when I pulled back, when I said, this is enough, I don't want this, I don't like this, and this happened a lot. immediately the response was always this: I need my son, I gotta see him, I gotta have him, to the point where it would wear me down. Like, he had to, if he had access to me, he rarely asked about his son, saw his son, spent time with his son, engaged his son. Whenever he does not have access to me, the sun sets and rises with his ability to have access to our son. So, as our son got older and became more verbal and things of that nature, like, he didn't want to go. Like, he's 11 years old and he will still have, till this day, an emotional breakdown about not wanting to be with his dad. Now, his dad will say that's because he's a mama's boy. Well, his dad is definitely a mama's boy. From my perspective, he is bullied severely by his father. He would prefer to have no contact. He cares very much about his dad, but he also knows that for his own mental and emotional safety, he needs to have distance. He's been in therapy as a result of that. Just a few years ago, his dad locked my whole family in his house, standing in front of the door with a metal bat, basically saying he wouldn't let anybody else out of the house unless they were willing to kind of take an ass whooping with the bat, because we would not allow him to fight my oldest daughter's boyfriend. So, last year, I was really ready to let things go. Well, 2 years ago, after that particular incident. However, we had to go to court because he lied and tricked me and the court into mediation, where I agreed to a temporary sharing of custody, because we've never had joint custody, except for maybe a year or two. And then COVID and everything hit, so we never went back for the revisit. So I was stuck in a joint custody mediated agreement that was supposed to be temporary. So after this whole thing, and I had to get a restraining order and the whole nine, I now have this joint custody, and I'm trying to get that changed because I'm trying to leave the state. And of course, it takes forever. We get a guardian ad litem, like the whole thing. When that ended, the judge, and this is the same judge who had taken custody from him before or whatever, maintained the joint custody because she felt like he had grown. The guardian ad litem, when we got to the end, like, this went on for an entire year. January 2023 was our final court date. And the guardian ad litem came to me and basically said, this is what I'm recommending. He's not going to like it, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, if the judge is not in your favor, it's going to be hell for me. So I have to be neutral. Because if I go in that courtroom and I confirm and I slam him with all the things that you would like me to, and the judge is just not swayed, he's going to emotionally and mentally torture me and our son. And she basically had seen examples of this throughout this year that she was working with us. She knew that. When the judge confirmed joint custody, the guardian ad litem for our son cried. And she's like, I feel like I failed my client. And she's like, if you want to appeal, I will come in as the guardian ad litem there. And I said, I'm exhausted from this. and I've taken on custody of a grandchild as a newborn, and I just don't have it in me. She's like, well, what are you going to do? Well, I'm going to give him what he wants so that my son can have peace. And this is since our son has been born, not since he's been born. I made the recollection when our son started talking. So around 5, when I realized he really didn't want to be with him. And it really wasn't just about he and I fighting. There were other dynamics involved. Since my son has been 5, so at least for the last 6 years, I have willingly subjected myself to a situationship that is 98% abusive, spiritually, emotionally, mentally. The abuse is not getting any less. I've gotten stronger, so there's a less of an effect, and there's less opportunity over the years. But I subject myself to this intentionally. Like, I offer myself up to keep him away from our son, because if he has access to me, he worries less about having access to our son. That explains why I'm in the situationship I'm in. And I decided, that happened 2023 January, and I decided by 2024 January, I would have myself and my son free of court, free of court orders, completely free, so that he could not, because he also used court whenever I was like, you broke the agreement, you didn't follow the court order, those types of things. He would be breaking it, and he would be dragging me to court constantly. So he was abusing the court system and exhausting me in every possible way. Throughout the process. So I have figured out how to allow him just a little bit of access to me to keep my son free. And that is why I am currently in the situation that I'm in. Now, this is the end. I know it's the end. It's this up until 2022. I kept holding out, even when I discovered what narcissistic personality was, when I discovered what financial abuse was, when I discovered what gaslighting was, when I discovered all of the flying monkeys. Like, he uses his whole, the family, mama, sister, whatever, classic narcissistic positions. Okay. He, to my knowledge, I don't know if he's ever been diagnosed with that, but definitely classic, right? The ex, part of the flying monkey crew, like the whole thing. If you know, you know. If you don't know, you need to investigate narcissistic personality, narcissistic characteristics. What does it look like when you're in an abusive narcissistic relationship? Because I read a book, I got an audiobook actually, a weekend that I was spending at his house, and was like, oh shit, this is what I'm in. So how do you get out of it? And it's not easy. If you are with someone who is a real narcissist, he has more covert narcissistic tendencies. It's not easy to get away from them. So I've experienced a lot of those things. over the years. But I'm making this recording. I'm creating this journal, partially because I know people like story time, partially because it is an opportunity for me to release what little bit either is stored in my tissues or what that comes up as I am going through the healing process, because, the body keeps the score, it remembers. And as I release the trauma from my body, some of this is coming up, and this is a way for me to get it out. And hopefully by me sharing my experience, if you are in this situation, it may give you some coping mechanisms and techniques until you can get completely free. So we will, by early spring, when I say that we'll be free, I changed our status of my entire family. So we are nationals. Every U.S. citizen is a national. We are born nationals. And then we are opted into citizenship. So you all listening, if you are in the U.S., you are a national. How it works in other countries, I don't fully know, but it's very similar. So everyone is a national. Not everyone, every U.S. citizen is a national, but not every national is a U.S. citizen. So we are no longer U.S. citizens. We will have diplomatic immunity when our passports return, and we will be leaving the state. He is aware that I'm leaving the state and has definitely done everything he could to delay that, but it is happening. And it is happening in a very covert way where he is being shown one version of options, but whatever is my final plan is simply my final plan. The whole reason of getting free is because I can't be dragged into court. Our son becomes my property and is no longer the property of the state, which he became when I registered him and got a social security card and birth certificate. So, which is why the state was able to make a determination as to who has custody, how we share custody, all of those types of things. We are no longer in that jurisdiction. And so knowing how to exert that and not answering a summons to court should he try again, because that was one of those things where you can't go, I'll go to court, you can't, it was stupid. And that's one of those narcissistic techniques, right? And it's crazy that a lot of them use the same tactics and they don't even know each other. But literally, even if only 1% of the population are narcissists, that still means there are millions of them. So a lot of us are experiencing this. He has very dominating tendencies and expressions, but it is because at the core of him, he is very, very weak and very, very vulnerable and very much controlled and manipulated by his mother. And that is very obvious to me now. It was not obvious to me in the beginning, of course. And here is, you're really going to have to wait till the end. You're going to have to ride this wave through January, because I'm literally recording this in his house right now. Of course, he's not in the room with me and not sharing a room with me, but it is where we are in this moment, which is why I thought it would be so profound to get started. My two younger children are here with me and my granddaughter, and I cooked dinner and I cleaned up except for leaving out the food so that he could make a plate whenever he arrived home from his mama's house. And then he decided at some point he wasn't going to eat and sent me a text message that said, have the kids clean the kitchen and shut it down because he wasn't eating. Or maybe he ate, I don't know. So I didn't get the message. When I saw it, I said, I'm putting the baby down. I'll clean it. I'll take care of it when I'm done. Because in his mind, he lives with his dad, which is a whole nother thing because he doesn't have the ability to be self-sufficient solo ever. In his mind, because I'm here, if I cook, I clean. If he cooks, me or my children clean up after him. Whatever his dad does, me and my children are to clean up after him. Like, he is literally the most disgusting in terms of tidiness, cleanliness, literally the nastiest person I have ever met in my life, like physically, environmentally nasty, not like bodily, but environment. So the fact that the kitchen has to be cleaned by a certain time or whatever, it's his reaching for control of something, anything, because he lacks any level of self-control and direction and certainty and whatever. And this is very typical of men and women who have these sorts of narcissistic tendencies or traits, or to a more than average extreme. Everybody at some point can display a narcissistic tendency or trait. But one of the things that I've noticed about this relationship, and maybe you guys have experienced this too, is that he can have a complete and total idea in his mind. Like, he invited me here. I didn't want to come. I always say no. And then I end up here. So now I'm here. But he had a vision of how things were to go. He does not have very good communication skills. And he does not know how to regulate his own emotions. And he lives in fight, flight, or freeze permanently. He does not know any of this because he will say, like, yeah, I know I'm in fight or flight a lot. He doesn't know that it's fight, flight, or freeze. But if he's not angry in the moment, he thinks he's not in fight or flight. But that's not how our nervous system actually works. So he does gain knowledge, but not enough to change the situation himself or respond completely differently, right? So he has this whole idea of how things are going to be because he got what he wanted. And then I show up, but I am non-compliant. I'm non-compliant and probably wouldn't be anyway, but mostly in this scenario, I'm non-compliant because I have no idea what it is he's thinking, what his expectation is, what is his fantasy that he has created. So he's angry, and he acts out that angriness, that disgust, that dismissive dismay with the whole situation that does not happen the way he wants, but it's projected at me. This is one of those things that he just does. He's very passive aggressive, which is why I say he's more of a covert narcissist. So I have bought food and he will throw it out. Like, I love pico de gallo. Well, it looked bad. Meanwhile, this man has had milk in the refrigerator from before I arrived that has not been thrown out. If I am drinking coffee and I set it on the counter and go to the bathroom, he will throw it out. I had a bottle of wine, set it in the kitchen because that's where I keep wine. Or, on a beverage cart. So he's wiping the counter down. Now, really what his problem was that he was wiping the counter down. And knew that if he verbalized that he felt like he shouldn't have to wipe the counter down, he would sound stupid. So he's angry that he's wiping the counter down, picks up the bottle of wine and says, "Here." And I said, "Well, what do you want me to do with this? Are you offering me a drink? Like, what's going on?" "No, it's in the way." "It's in the way of what?" "It's in the way of you cleaning." "Okay, so where would you like me to put the wine?" "I don't know, but not in here." I said, "So you don't want the wine in the kitchen?" He says no. So I turn around, there's stuff in the dining room, I set it there. The next day, we're arguing about it again, because how did you think putting it in the dining room was better than where it was to begin with? I didn't think that. But you didn't want it in the kitchen where I thought it was the better place. And when I asked you, where do you want it, you wouldn't tell me. So you could have came up with something better, or you could have told me, where would you like me to keep the wine? That's not the point. Why can't you figure it out? It was insanity. And when I was new in this relationship, it would break me down. And what I realized is that is the intention. So when it didn't bother me, and I was like, "Listen, if you tell me where you want it, I'll put it there. And then this conversation is over because you're not getting it." Okay, fine. And I leave the kitchen completely, go find some music, and clear my energy so that I can go back to doing what I'm doing. So then he comes and whispers in my ear, "I know what you're doing." So I said, "What do you mean?" "Oh, where do you want it?" He mimics me. I don't respond. So now he's not being fed, and then he switches, right? So now I'm listening to music. I'm still in a good mood. He didn't get the anger. He didn't get the crying. He didn't get the depression, because that's what he feeds off of, because he is from a very, very toxic, negative environment. And if there's no drama going on, he does not know how to sustain himself. So because he can't get that from me, now he's going to try the other way. So now I'm dancing. He walks up on me, sees me dancing, so he starts dancing. I smile, turn the other way, and continue doing what I'm doing. I don't engage. So now he's angry again because I don't want to dance with him or whatever. However, he thought that was going to play out, because it doesn't matter to him that literally 20 minutes ago, you were being an asshole for no reason, right? He's over it. I need to be over it, whatever. So in this scenario right now, and it's important because I teach manifestation, because I teach frequency, because I teach those things and strive to live in those things, and relationships have drastically changed, and people have come and gone, and this shit right here has stayed. I've used it as a testing ground. Is it the best way? No. But until recently, I did not feel safe enough to cut him off and then have no communication with him when he had access to my son, because he is mentally and emotionally abusive. And I do believe that he has the ability to be physically abusive to a child. He has definitely physically hurt my dog and other animals. So I just didn't feel safe. I felt like he's a ticking time bomb in that respect. And I would rather that be projected at me than at my son. So I don't recommend, if you have this type of situation, that you play with it the same way that I have played with it over the years. Yes, I've used this to get stronger. Yes, I've used this now as a teaching, platform, but it is not safe because some people have more extreme situations and you don't want to put your life or your children's lives in danger. So never think that I'm saying leave. As a matter of fact, as a result of this, one of the things that I am doing is I've started GoddeLife Ministries, and it will be a safe place for women to leave from whatever state they're in, to come there, to stay there for their transition, and for those who like to leave the country at some point, be able to do that. But to come there, stay there, be protected, become free of the system so that they cannot use the system against you to get access to the children or you, or lock you up, or any of those things. So that's why this is so important. All the things that I went through, even trying to get a protective order, even having to go to court. He literally, when it was time to get a permanent protective order, which I thought was going to save me, because that would have been 2 years. And even if I would have stayed in the area so that I could take custody of my granddaughter, the first year would be up. And then the first year was up in July, and I would have been able to leave the state, and he would still have no contact with me or our son. That's what I was hoping would happen. Instead, we got it there. Literally, he stood up. He had his sister and his brother-in-law with him. He stood up. He walked around. He threw his arms around. He was creating this great theatrics. He lied. When I tell you that there is no way to have a genuine relationship, and these are one of those turning points for me, where every opportunity that I've seen him in, if it would benefit him to lie about me or on me, he does. So we're in court. He lies and lies and lies, to the point where he was saying if it wasn't for him, me and my kids would have been sleeping in a car. He told the judge I had like 19 children. He even told the judge he had broken up with me. And literally she asked him like 4 times, "You broke up with her?" Yeah, you broke up with her. The theatrics. He then went on and on and on about our sex life, which she listened to. She even paused him, went to the back, came back, and continued to listen to him. And then she decides, after he has professed his love for me, said we had, a lot of good sex, that he would never, ever hurt me. And, he might have been mean, but he didn't put his hands on me to kick me out of the bed or whatever because I wouldn't have sex with him. Like, it never happened. He didn't remember, like, all of this. And then she says, well, I think you're safe. I think he was mad at your kids that day. I don't think that what he did was legal, but I don't think you need protection from him, is what this woman told me. Meanwhile, after this is over, he then confesses to me that he, in fact, had been stalking us. We had seen his car drive by. We had seen his car outside. Like, he was not okay. And we were in danger. because anything could have, had he been seen or spotted or confronted. Meanwhile, he also is carrying guns that are not registered, like the whole thing. And none of that, there was nothing done to protect me and my family. Not at all. So that being said, and his family was there cheering him on like he was putting on a performance, because every time he does something, they support him heavily in avoiding the trouble, getting out of the trouble. He doesn't deserve the trouble, but they don't have the ability to control him, because he can become out of control to stop him from doing the trouble. They are very offended by others, especially including at this time me, because when he's out of line, I will call the police. And they feel like I can't be trusted, because I will call the police if I feel like my safety is in jeopardy by him. I will call the police when the person he's cheating on me with is harassing me. And this is truly because he comes from a place of no boundaries, right? If you have a narcissistic parent, they're not going to teach you boundaries because they benefit from crossing them. And if you have boundaries and you do things to stop them from doing what they want to do, shame on you, right? His family uses a lot of shame and guilt to manipulate each other into doing things, which he tried with me for a decade now. Once I understood boundaries, what shame was, etc., it stopped. But that being said, I'm going to wrap up our first episode of The Man That's Gotta Go. That's what I'm going to call this, The Man That Has to Go. And we'll do 2 parts of each episode. I will give you some backstory moving forward, and I will tell you what's going on currently. Because I think, yes, it's important for you to have the backstory of the things I've been through, because if they're red flags for you, if they, alert you and make you aware that you're in a situation you need to get out of, that's great. Also, it's like I said, it's great for story time to hear all the unbelievable things that have happened in this Jerry Springer-like situationship. But what's most important from this day moving forward is to document as well what I'm doing in the exit, right, for me. And that starts with, there was a self-love journey. There was a self-love journey. And then there was a healing journey, right? And you can do these together, but it's important because that self-love piece, I was so torn up from the previous marriage. I was having a hard time forgiving myself for even staying in that marriage as long as I did. When I ended up pregnant in this relationship, and honestly, everything in this relationship, we had a couple of issues. I'd say 2 in the first 3 years or whatever. But I was relatively happy. And it wasn't until I found out I was pregnant that all hell break loose. And all the shit hit the fan with him. And he literally became a different person from the moment it was confirmed. But the reason that it was tolerated was because I felt, and at the time I believed I was broken from that relationship. I spent so much time trying to make sure that the children who were older got what they needed. I didn't take care of me. I didn't put myself in therapy when I put everybody else in therapy. I didn't do the things for my own healing because I was physically abused, mentally abused, verbally abused, emotionally abused in that relationship. So I did not go on a self-love journey in between relationships. And that in and of itself was not enough. But when you do that, and when I did do that, it shifted how I was seeing the relationship. That self-love journey is what led me to understanding what a narcissist was, and what financial abuse was, and all of these different types of abuse that I was experiencing in the current situation that I didn't know of. And I started to love myself enough to realize that I didn't deserve that. Things started to shift, and then he had to shift, and he was trying to compensate for a lot of the knowledge that I was getting and then implementing. And so there would be times when I was very, very hopeful that it was going to get better. And I think I started saying that earlier. I held on for those first 10 years, like, it's going to get better, it's going to get better, it's going to get better. And then the last 5 years have just been, how do I get a clean exit, right? And I felt this way in my previous marriage, between the bipolar, the alcoholism, etc. And in this situationship, there's definitely alcoholism, like, without a doubt, and probably some chemical imbalances. But so now it's like, how do I get out? How am I going to get a clean break? Because now, because of my self-love journey, I realized I needed to heal my body. As I started to heal my body, you start to recognize patterns. You start to recognize what triggers your body and sends you back into the state that you're trying to bring it out of, right? Which shines light on every relationship that you have. And that's what it was doing for me. So, in that regards, it has led me here. And what I do from here is important because I'm hoping it's going to lay the groundwork to help others get out, get away, be free. Now, I do not have a very specific self-love journey program currently available, but I do have a healing program, and this is for anybody who has experienced any type of trauma, because I did lose my father in 2019. This year in late October, early November, I lost my sister. And so those are considered traumas too. If you lose your house, through foreclosure, through whatever it is, that is a trauma, right? When you lose a loved one, when you suddenly lose a job, those are traumas. And our body stores that. But also if you've experienced any physical abuse, emotional abuse, abuse at work, racism, things like that, those are all traumas that are happening to us that our body keeps the score of. And so we need to work to release those traumas so that they're not building and creating this Lego block tower within our nervous system and breaking the body down. So if you are interested, you can definitely access the Goddess Healing Program through Goddess University. And if you do it that way, it's like $54 a month, and you have access to, 70 plus. By January, it'll be like 100 different classes on all different levels in different areas. If you just want to focus on the healing course, you can purchase the healing course also at through the website. If you go to LaMeél.com and click on Goddess University, You can scroll through and see the course there, or you can go to courses on LaMeél.com and see the course there, and get enrolled. If you have any questions, use our contact tech support number. We'll get them all answered for you. But that is a resource, and I will try to share different resources that we have available end of each episode. Please remember to stay safe. And if you are looking for something, need something, please reach out. We may be able to support you through GoddeLife Ministries. Thank you so much for listening and being part of my journey. And I will see you in the next episode.
LaMeél Radio. Empowerment radio for women, by women.